everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared, and today we're talking about the Super Bowl. It's tomorrow, and is it something that isn't of consequence? Does it have anything to do with the second coming? I don't know, but I will say this. The Lord does like to communicate through various mediums, so that all of his children can understand, and a lot of times that's symbolically, right? So you may, to some of you, this is just gonna be a nonsense video, and that's fine. Maybe just don't watch it then. But I'm gonna show you some pretty interesting things. Okay, what I think is really interesting, um, namely the teams that are playing and what they symbolize, like their names, and some interesting stuff about professional teams out of Kansas City, which I didn't really realize until this year when I was thinking about it. So, okay, so let's do it like this. Okay, let me lay the groundwork why I would even think about this, consider this. Okay, so going with the idea that the Lord communicates through various means, I probably don't need to tell you because you probably already experienced it. Maybe there was a time when at a time in your life when you were at a crossroads, you heard a certain song on the radio, you saw a billboard, you saw something on the TV, somebody you were talking to said something, and you took it as an answer to a prayer, right? Um, so it's not really irrational to think that the Lord wouldn't use certain things to answer prayers or put ideas in your mind. Um, Okay. So for example, let me give you a real life example. In in 2015, okay, this is a list of Super Bowls. In 2015, February 1st, 2015, we had this Super Bowl. Excuse me. And it was the New England Patriots versus the Seattle Seahawks. And they were playing in Arizona. Now, in 2015, I was in the Army. And me and Jenica were talking about, we knew at that point that we were going to be getting out of the Army. My back was hurting. There's no way I could have continued. I would have gotten like med boarded out if I had stayed. I wasn't going to stay in the Army because my back and other things. So we were trying to figure out where are we going to move? Where are we going to move after the Army? Well, it just so happened that the New England Patriots were our favorite team. Initially, not mine. Ironically, back when I was in Utah, I had a few favorite teams, and one of them was the Kansas City Chiefs. It's almost like it was a foreshadowing of me actually moving here to Kansas. But anyway, when we got married, we realized the need to have a favorite team as a couple, and we went on our honeymoon to make a long story short, we ended up in Cape Cod, right? And the closest place to Cape Cod as far as NFL teams goes was the Patriots. They play out of Boston, and for some reason my wife just like honed in on that, and I did not really care that much for the Patriots, and but then I just did it. I just did it, and I'm glad that I did. I think she was actually being inspired, frankly. So we became Patriots fans, and that was fine, and I liked them, and I'm not like a huge football person anyway. I only kind of like, really, the only games that I watch is the Super Bowl. There was a time early in our marriage where I was a little bit more into it, but it's been a long time. Okay, so anyway, so we're in the Army, okay, trying to figure out where to move afterwards, and we had a few different options that we were considering. We were thinking about Idaho, we were thinking about Utah, we were thinking about Vegas, and then we were thinking about Arizona. Okay. And it was really hard because all of them had pros and cons. Well, so we had the New England Patriots, our favorite team, that went to the Super Bowl, and then they were playing in Arizona. And it was quite the game. As you can see, the score was close, 28-24, and the Patriots won. And so just because of that, not just because of that, there were other things, but this helped add to the growing list of what we felt were signs to move to Arizona. And when they won that Super Bowl, it left us with a really good feeling, like a feeling of peace in our hearts, and it just like it felt really good. Um, and so this was kind of like one of the main things that kind of confirmed it for us. Move to Arizona, and so we did. And what's interesting is that once we had moved to Arizona, the Patriots. Okay, then they didn't go the next year, but then the year after that, they were back in the Super Bowl, and this time they were playing in Texas, which is just where we had just come from. We had just come from Texas because I was at Fort Hood, and then they won that Super Bowl. So it was almost like a double confirmation. And looking back, I can see why that was the right place to go. It was definitely the right place to go. It made my transition out of the army very smooth and seamless, whereas it probably wouldn't have been if I had gone somewhere else. And it was meant to be. Okay, so that's a real life example how the Super Bowl can affect somebody on a spiritual level, as well as other things, other sports, other entertainment, you name it, whatever. Okay, so let's fast forward and let's think about what's going on this year. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. And there is some very interesting symbolism going on here. So, first, with the Super Bowl itself, this is Super Bowl 57. Okay? 57. And by the way, I meant to say this in the Temple Changes video, but I failed to mention it's interesting that these significant temple changes that everybody is really excited about, um, they began on the 7th of February. I think that's interesting. So anyway, we have Super Bowl 57. 50 is an important number because it is the number of Jubilee. Okay, every 50 years, if the third temple was, or if the temple was still here in Jerusalem, the Jews would be celebrating a Jubilee every 50 years. When we're talking about Pentecost or Shavuot, which is the Jewish name for it, or the Feast of Weeks, the way that you do that, it happens every year. And it's after you go through 7 weeks, so that's 49 days. And then on that 50th day is Shavuot or Pentecost. So 50 is a significant number in the scriptures and in Judaism and stuff like that. And then you take 50, you add a 7 to it, you have 57. So it's interesting. It's being played on the 12th, and 12 is a significant number, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. These are just like some minor things, just like little tiny things I want to point out. Not, it's not that huge. Okay, now the teams themselves. Okay, the teams themselves. First, let's think about the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. The Philadelphia Eagles, if you were to look at the entire NFL, okay, I have this Wikipedia article up that has all the teams. If you were to look at the entire NFL and all the teams and which ones would best represent the United States, there's really only maybe 3 teams that would. Okay, so now we're looking at like a big symbolic level. The New England Patriots, right? Here they are. Their colors are red, white, and blue. Their logo is like an American Revolutionary or like a Minuteman or something like that. Okay, so the New England Patriots. Let's just go through the whole list. So no, not the Bills really. Their colors are red, white, and blue, but not the Bills, not the Dolphins, not the Jets, not the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers, Texans, Colts, Jaguars, Titans, Broncos, Chiefs, no. Raiders, Chargers, Cowboys, Giants, no. Philadelphia Eagles, yes. Philadelphia Eagles, yes. Why? Well, the eagle is a symbol of the United States, right? And I should have looked this up, but I'm pretty sure the reason why they're called the Eagles is because Pennsylvania is where the Constitution was signed. I have that up. Okay, signing of the U.S. Constitution. The signing of the United States Constitution occurred on, interestingly, September 17th of 1787. A lot of sevens there. At Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, so I would say Philadelphia is a good, maybe one of the best teams. If you're going to symbolize the United States in a team, it'd probably be them. You have the Washington Commanders, which they used to be the Washington Redskins, but they changed it because of, all the stuff that they're doing nowadays, changing everything for sensitivity reasons. And now they're called the Commanders. In this in this article, it says that the meaning of that is okay. After sifting through more than 40,000 choices suggested by fans, the franchise finally decided on Washington Commanders in homage to the U.S. Capitol's connection to the military, which I think that's pretty cool. Actually, I really like that because I was in the military. Okay, so and plus this is the capital, right? I think the stadium's actually in Baltimore. I'm not sure actually, but anyway, what the Washington referred to here is not Washington State. If you're outside the country, you don't know these things. It's Washington D.C. Okay, and then you got the Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings, Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Buccaneers, Cardinals, Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks. So you can see there's really only three teams that would uh, symbolize the entirety of the United States, and maybe not even so much the Commanders. Well, except for the fact that they're in Washington. Okay, yeah. So there's only like three. Okay. Now, you'll remember, it's been a while since I've talked about this, but I have a whole playlist called the Book of Daniel. I have another playlist for the Book of Revelation and another one for Antichrist. And it's been a while since we've really dived into those things. But if you'll recall, um, in the Book of Daniel, uh, Daniel has a vision where he sees these beasts, and what they represent are different empires from the time of the Babylonian captivity all the way until the last days. Like the primary empires that would, you know, um, scatter the Jews, be a scourge, stuff like that. So the first one is a lion with eagle's wings, and this is the Babylonian Empire, the same that destroyed Jerusalem and Solomon's temple. The second one is a bear, and that was this was the empire of the Persians and the Medians. Okay, and then after that you have the leopard, which had on the back of it four wings of a fowl, which is symbolic of how quickly it spread. And this represents the Macedonian Empire, or in other words, the Greeks under Alexander the Great, and basically that time frame. And then the fourth, in Daniel, it doesn't give it a specific animal. It just says it's a beast that's dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth and da da da. Just a kind of like a nondescript um, beast that's just horrible, it sounds like, but it doesn't actually assign an actual animal to it. And then that beast has 10 horns, and then you go into all that. If you're interested in this stuff, go check out my playlist because I've really dug into this pretty deep. Okay, and it's pretty cool. Now, the next time that you see these same beasts come up is in the Book of Revelation, which is interesting. I feel like the Book of Revelation is basically the sequel, in a sense, to the Book of Daniel. And in this case, this is what you have. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Okay, so this time, John the Revelator is seeing one beast, but it has 7 heads, 10 horns. And then he continues, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. These are the 3 beasts that you find in Daniel, right? And I take this to mean, and others do too, that essentially what you have now is you have the descended characteristics, traditions, stuff like that from these previous empires that have culminated into one great, worldly power. We no longer have the Babylonians. We no longer have the Persians and Medians as they were formerly. We no longer have the Macedonian Empire or the Roman Empire, but all those things have kind of descended through time, and they have an influence on the world today, right? The remnants of these empires. Okay, so So the fourth beast. Was there ever an animal assigned to the fourth beast? Well, in the Apocrypha in Second Esdras, there is, and I feel like this could actually be true. A lot of you recognize this as Ezra's eagle, right? I'm not a big like Ezra's eagle person as far as like comparing the feathers to presidents of the United States, but you know, if that's what happens, then that's what happens, and wow, that's incredible. But what the thing I find more interesting in this is it has a description for the fourth beast. It says here, I looked and saw something like a lion being roused, roaring out of the forest. Now, this would represent Christ. Don't confuse this with the beast from Daniel or Revelation. This is like, you know, the Lion of Judah, Christ. Roaring out of the forest, I heard how he spoke in a human voice and said to the eagle, listen, listen, you, and I will speak to you. The Most High says to you, aren't you the last of the four beasts that I made to rule in my world so that I may bring about the end of my times through them? So the lion, which I do believe represents Christ, maybe it represents Judah, but probably Christ. He's like, hey, aren't you the fourth one? You're the fourth beast, right? And I don't think anyone would really doubt if you were to pick one nation. Okay. Even though in Daniel's vision and King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, you have like in the dream you have the feet and the 10 toes, and some are iron, some are clay, and then in Daniel's vision you have the 10 horns. So it's not like a single thing. But if you did have just like a single nation that represented the end, it would probably be the United States, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? I think it would. I think it would. So it's mighty interesting that you have this in the Apocrypha. The eagle is a symbol of the United States. They chose the eagle for the Philadelphia Eagles because that's where the Constitution was signed, right? So you see where I'm going with this. You see where I'm going with this. Now, let's start talking about Kansas City. Recently, in recent videos, I've been talking a lot about Kansas City and Jackson County and Independence. Let me pull it up. Independence, Missouri. I should have. Sorry, sometimes I think I have everything ready and I don't. Independence, Missouri is a suburb of Kansas City, right? Kansas City is a major American city and metropolitan area that lies on the border of Missouri and Kansas. When we're talking about Kansas City, usually you're referring to Kansas City, Missouri, because this is where, that's where the actual city is, and most of the population is over here. But there is a Kansas City, Kansas, which is just right on the other side of the border. But anyway, when it comes to sports and stuff, I think a lot of people, from what I've noticed here, everyone kind of views any team out of Kansas City as belonging to both Kansas and to Missouri, even though technically they may be headquartered on the Missouri side. Okay, so if instead we had New Jerusalem here, like let's pretend that was actually the actual physical political city of New Jerusalem was here, these would be the sports teams of New Jerusalem, right? So the New Jerusalem Chiefs. So I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but let me show you some interesting things about these teams in this area. Okay, so let's see. Sports in Kansas City. So these are their professional sport teams. So you have the Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Royals, Sporting Kansas City, and Kansas City Current. Now, the thing that kind of caught my attention when I was first thinking of this whole idea was the Kansas City Royals, which is the baseball team. Royal is an interesting word, right? Isn't Kansas City, or in other words, when it becomes New Jerusalem, isn't that going to be the center place in Jackson County in Independence? Isn't that going to be the center place where a king rules, right? It's going to be one of the two world capitals. The other one is going to be Jerusalem, and then this is going to be New Jerusalem. And the king is going to be in both locations, Christ, when he comes for the second coming. So I thought about the chiefs, and interestingly, chief, well, let's just go through this one by one. Okay, so Kansas City Chiefs. You don't typically think of a chief as like a king, but let me show you a couple things. In fact, let's do it in this order. So I went to chief in Wikipedia. You have military ranks that include the word chief. And then in the UK, well, no, sorry, not the UK. In Scotland and Ireland, you have this concept of chief of the name, which is the head of a family or a clan, right? And then you have tribal chief. That's typically, I think, what we think about when we think about a chief is a tribal chief. And so I looked up the article for that. A tribal chief or chieftain is the leader of a tribal society or chiefdom. It's interesting that when we talk about Israel, we're talking about tribes, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. And it is a family. It's a family. The concept of tribe is a broadly applied concept based on tribal concepts of societies of Western Afro-Eurasia. Tribal societies are sometimes categorized as an intermediate stage between the band society of the Paleolithic stage and civilization with centralized super-regional government-based in societies. Anthropologist Elman Service distinguishes two stages of tribal societies. Simple societies, organized by limited instances of social rank and prestige, and more stratified societies, led by chieftains or tribal kings, right? A tribal king, a chiefdom. Stratified tribal societies led by tribal kings are thought to have flourished from the Neolithic stage into the Iron Age, albeit in competition with urban civilizations and empires beginning in the Bronze Age. So, chief really is, if you think about it, just kind of another name for a type of king. Although in this case, it's like a tribal king of a chiefdom. All right, so that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Next, you have how the Kansas City Chiefs got their name. Excuse me. Hunt agreed to relocate the franchise to Kansas City on May 22nd, 1963, and on May 26th, the team was renamed the Kansas City Chiefs. Hunt and head coach Hank Stram initially planned to retain the Texans name, so that's kind of interesting. They would have been the Texans, which we do have a Texans now in Houston, but anyway, but a fan contest determined the new Chiefs name in honor of Mayor Bartle's nickname that he acquired in his professional role as scout executive of the St. Joseph and Kansas City Boy Scout Councils and founder of the Scouting Society, the tribe of Mikose. Mikose. Despite the historical use of Native American features, it has been acknowledged that the team's name was not a direct reference to Native Americans, but only to Bartle's nickname, Chief. So, okay, and I'll just end it there. So that is interesting. Although, yeah, the fact that they use, they use an arrowhead. A lot of times when you think of arrowheads, you think about Native American weaponry and arrows, right? And who are Native Americans? Well, the majority of them, we don't really know how it breaks down. It's likely that there were other peoples here in the Americas other than Lehi and his family. But generally speaking, when we're talking about Native Americans, they're Lamanites, right? They're representatives. They're a part of the house of Joseph. And so here you have a perfect symbol in the New Jerusalem, where you have kind of a Native American Lamanite symbol. You have the chief symbol here, a king, and it's in a place where we're going to have the New Jerusalem. It's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. Okay, so we got the Chiefs. All right. And then we have the Kansas City Royals, And let me pull up their article. Gosh, I really messed up on this. Okay, so the Royals it's the baseball team. Okay. The name Royals pays homage to the American Royal, a livestock show, which is interesting. Horse show, rodeo, and championship barbecue competition held annually in Kansas City since 1899, which makes me like them even more. And I'm not really a baseball fan. The name also fits into something of a theme for other professional sports franchises in the city, including the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFL, the former Kansas City Kings of the NBA, the former Kansas City Monarchs of the, well, I don't think I can say this without getting in trouble, but of this right here. Okay. Um, in 1968, the team held a name the team contest that received more than 17,000 entries. Interesting number. Sanford Port, a bridge engineer from the suburb of Overland Park, Kansas, was named the winner for his Royals entry. His reason had nothing to do with royalty. Kansas City's new baseball team should be called the Royals because of Missouri's billion-dollar livestock income, Kansas City's position as the nation's leading stocker and feeder market, and the nationally known American Royal Parade and Pageant, Port wrote. The team's board voted 6-1 on the name, with the only opposition coming from team owner, that sucks, uh, Ewing Kaufman, who eventually changed his vote and said the name had grown on him. um, okay, so doesn't have to do with royalty, but they do in the logo. They incorporate a crown. Okay, and then it's the Royals, and it's I think it looks pretty nice. I do. But isn't that part interesting? Where it says here that there's kind of a theme going on in Kansas City, and this kind of happens in other places too. Like for example, up in Chicago, you have the Chicago Bears, which is the NFL team, and then you have the Chicago Cubs, which is a baby bear for, for the baseball team, and then you have the Chicago Bulls, which are the basketball team. My understanding is that the reason why they have those names is because of the stock market in Chicago. Because you have bears and you have the terminology of bears and bulls, like a bear market, a bull market. So anyway, it's something that does happen with major cities. I did a video once. In fact, let me pull it up if I can. I did a video about how Utah has kind of had an interesting um, thing with its teams. Oh gosh, I think this sport. I'm not going to be able to find it. It may have been this one when I did Honeybee, Deseret, Beehive, Symbolism. Basically, Utah has had a bunch of teams that have double Z's in their names, like Grizzlies, Jazz. Um, so anyway, there's a thing that is kind of going on in Salt Lake. But anyway, so in Kansas City, their theme, it's not the stock market, it's not double Z's, it's royalty. It's royalty. Of all places. Of all places, it's royalty. I don't think that that's by coincidence. And you may see it as silly, but I really don't think it is. I don't. Um, so anyway, there's other ones here. Let's see. Okay, where did it go? Okay, so you got the Chiefs, you got the Royals, Sporting. I'm going to go through how they got these names over here, which these are kind of interesting too. I'll show you why in a minute. But first, let's look at these other teams. So we got the Kansas City Monarchs. We just touched on that. So the Monarchs. Kansas City Kings, which they're not there anymore. They're now the Sacramento Kings right here. See? It says in 1972, the team relocated again, this time to Kansas City, Missouri, and renamed the Kansas City Omaha Kings, because it initially split its home games between Kansas City and Omaha, Nebraska, which frankly that would kind of bother me as a well, I guess it. I mean, I'm just wondering if it because like if you're a player, like say that you live in Kansas City, it's like you could have all your home games just right there where you live. Uh, but no, for them, I guess they had to go basically almost every time they had to travel, except for if it was in the place where they lived. The nickname was changed to avoid confusion with the baseball team dubbed the Kansas City Royals. After 3 seasons, the team truncated to Kansas City Kings, but continued to play several home games per season in Omaha through March 1978. So that's interesting. Kansas City Royals, Kansas City Kings, Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Monarchs. Okay. Um, Here's one from 1910 to 1912. They had a Kansas City Royal Giants. Okay, that's pretty much it there. So there's also a couple other interesting things I want to point out. Oh yeah, here's the Kansas City Monarchs. Okay, this was like for African Americans. It was like a team that they had, and they had the crown here and all that. Let's see. I don't think I highlighted anything here. I just wanted to show that. Um, Here's the Kansas City Monarchs again. It's kind of the same thing, and it's interesting that they have red, white, and blue for their colors. And this is like a really nice, vintage-looking logo. I would like to have this on a shirt. Frankly, that's pretty cool. Okay, American Royal. Um, no, I don't. Okay, no. Okay, Sporting Kansas City. Okay, now Sporting Kansas City. This is their professional soccer team. But as you can see, it doesn't have excuse me, it doesn't have like a royal type name. But one thing that I saw here, okay, so first, okay, they were initially the Wizards. Following the 1996 season, the Wiz changed names, becoming the Wizards, following legal action from electronics retailer The Wiz, which that's very unfortunate. I can understand if like somehow you're losing business or like maybe they had a valid reason to do that. I don't know, but without knowing more, that seems just kind of like trivial. Something similar happened to the Buzz. Utah had a minor league baseball team called the Buzz, which made it so that they had two Z's in their names and in their name, and a B is a symbol for Utah and for the church. So they changed it to the B's, and I think that's currently what it is. Anyway, it's unfortunate, but I can understand why they did it if there was a good reason. Now, what's interesting here, okay, with the rebranding of Wizards to Sporting, the team followed a recent trend in MLS, in the Major League Soccer, of adopting European style names, such as Toronto FC, DC United, and Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake. Now, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Um, so not so much the fact that they have Sporting, that doesn't really mean anything, but it's interesting that Kansas City, along with Salt Lake, they changed their names, or they adopted European style names. And then, of course, it's worth noting, you know, in Salt Lake you have the Utah Royals, which is a women's league or American women's professional soccer, and for Salt Lake it's the Utah Royals, and then the men's team is Real Salt Lake, which going to those games is really fun. Uh, that was maybe one of the only reasons I wanted to stay in Utah, because my wife and I had bought jerseys and went to a few games, and it was so much fun. And not only that, but Real Salt Lake. So their name. This is the weirdest thing. Their name basically comes from Real Madrid, right? Um, Real Madrid is like it's a big team. Like in the sporting world, people know or in the soccer world, people know Real Madrid, and there's a big rivalry between Real Madrid and um, Barca or Barcelona, right? And what's interesting about Real Salt Lake is that their uniforms have the colors of Barcelona. Okay. It's almost like an insult to them, I would imagine. But they have the colors of Barcelona, but the name of Real Madrid. It's just it's so weird. But because I went on my mission to Barcelona, I really liked these colors, because I like Barcelona. So it was a really cool thing to have a Utah sports team named after these teams in Spain where I served my mission. But anyway, what's interesting for our purposes here is that they use the crown and it's Real Salt Lake. Oh yeah, Real. That's the word for royal in Spanish. Real. So an interesting thing going on there with Real Salt Lake and Utah's Royal or Utah Royals. Okay, let's go back to where we were. Um, Sporting became the first major league team to have played in stadiums on both sides of the state line in Kansas City, while Kansas City became the only U.S. metropolitan area other than New York City to have major professional sports teams playing in different states. This is significant because I just want to highlight again the fact that um, we were talking about New Jerusalem and how it's on, it's in a border area, even though it's not like tribal borders between Benjamin and Judah, as is the case with Jerusalem. Uh, the New Jerusalem, interestingly, is on the border of Kansas and Missouri. I don't know what political borders are going to look like in the millennium, but it's interesting that there's that parallel between Old Jerusalem and New Jerusalem, and it's highlighted here when it comes to the sports, right? So, in fact, okay, there's another thing. Okay, this is the one I was thinking about. In fact, that's why for the Kansas City Current, this is the women's soccer team. They have the two stars right here. One represents Missouri and one represents Kansas. And interestingly about them, look at this. Kansas City last had a National Women's Soccer League team in 2017 when two-time champions FC Kansas City ceased operations and its player-related assets were transferred to expansion team Utah Royals FC. So isn't that weird? You have this like weird connection, this like soccer connection between Kansas City and Salt Lake. In terms of going with the European names, they both went with European names. And then in this case, the team that was in Kansas City, the FC Kansas City, moved to Utah and became the Utah Royals FC. It's weird. It's weird. Okay, and then as far as their name goes, oh yeah, I pulled it up here. So the name Current, they take that from the Missouri River. Okay. The Missouri River, which goes through Kansas City. Here it is right here, Missouri River. And the thing that's interesting about the Missouri River is that we know that the original Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden, it's in this area. This is where it was. And so when you're reading in Genesis and it's talking about the different rivers, surely the Missouri River would have been one of those, unless things have like dramatically changed. But I'm not so sure that it has. So, having a team named after this river and knowing the significance of this river, according to our scriptures, is really interesting. And the Missouri River actually comes up in scripture in D&C, I believe. Let's just do a quick search. Let's see, scriptures, Missouri River. Yeah, let's see. In D&C 121:33, you have, how long can rolling waters remain impure? What powers shall stay the heavens? As well might man stretch forth his puny arm to stop the Missouri River in its decreed course, or to turn it upstream, as to hinder the Almighty from pouring down knowledge from heaven upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints. Isn't that kind of fitting, that you have this team that is named after this river, and it's like man can't stop God, right? So you might as well see this, the Kansas City Current, as the team of man can't stop God, and New Jerusalem, um, and being on the border of these two states. It's really cool. It's really cool. Okay, so now let's talk about the Super Bowl. So Kansas City, excuse me, Kansas City in 2020, it was for the 2019 season. They played the San Francisco 49ers. Okay. So I remember people talking about this. This is kind of like where I originally got this idea. In 2020, I was listening to different YouTube channels, different Christian denominations, and they were making mention of this fact, how this was perfect. Everyone knew that 2020, um, not because the pandemic was only kind of like starting, so not so much because of that, but because this was the transition between presidents, right? Because of the elections, and so a lot of people were really pumped about Trump and stuff like that. And so people had ideas about how things were going to go. But what happened is, in that year, you had the Kansas City Chiefs that played the San Francisco 49ers. And they really represent two very different regions of the country. Kansas City is in the heartland, right? And when it comes to um, wholesome family values, Christian values, things like that, you typically associate that with the more rural areas, and opposed to people that are more urbanized, people that are more um, of the world, more secular. They tend to be, ironically, just kind of like along the coast and in these areas. They're not really so much here. Although, Kansas City, obviously, it's actually a pretty blue area as far as like voting goes. It's more secular here. It's going to be like that in any big city. But if you're just looking at the general region, okay, this is the heartland of America, and people here tend to not have secular values, right? Uh, Now, the opposite of that, and there's probably no other place more perfect to represent the opposite of that than San Francisco. than San Francisco. Um, it's interesting that the 49ers, it says here, the team is named after the prospectors who arrived in California in the 1849 gold rush, right? Everybody knows about the 49ers. There was like, oh, gold. And so everybody rushed to California for gold. And, you know, it- it- people move to different places for different reasons. It's interesting to contrast the reason why the Saints moved to Utah. It wasn't for gold, it was because of persecution, and because they were being led by the Lord. And then you have another group of people that came here for worldly reasons. And I'm not like putting down anyone that would have been a 49er. You have to make a living, obviously. But just generally speaking, there's a big contrast between those two motivations. San Francisco, I don't need to tell you, is like a capital of sin, essentially. There's no easy way of saying that. You have some of the most secular, most vitriolic institutions. You have Berkeley over here. There's a university over there. Um, you just have a lot of bad things, a lot of bad things going on here in San Francisco. I'm not going to deny it's a beautiful city. I would like to visit it and check out different things, but as far as the overall spiritual welfare of this place, I don't feel too good about it, and it's no secret, you know. This was actually, I think it was considered um, the birthplace of the hippie movement right here in Haight Ashbury. Where is it? Haight, and then where's Ashbury? Oh, it's right here. So like right here, this intersection. I had a I had a social studies teacher that was all about that, and she had a Haight Ashbury um, like street signs hanging up in her classroom. Uh, Let me just read about that really quick. Haight Ashbury. Let's go to the Wikipedia. Is a district of San Francisco, California, named for the intersection of Haight and Ashbury streets. It's also called the Haight and the Upper Haight. The neighborhood is known as one of the main centers of the counterculture in the 1960s. And it's interesting, I must say. It's interesting that hate, if you didn't know how it was spelled, uh, it sounds like another word, and there is a lot of that comes from this kind of people, even though they would portray it as something else. Okay, let's look at this. Let's see, Cole Street left, and you got a bunch of this kind of stuff going on there. It's just blue hair right here. Ugh, oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't look at it for too long. Let's look at the street view though. Let's go here. Let's see what it looks like. I mean, it's nice. I love this like old architecture. It's cool. It's cool. I wouldn't mind living here if it wasn't for what it represents and what you have prevailing here. What's going on right here? That doesn't look like they're up to any good. Fire truck. They're going to be needing that pretty soon. Although, sorry, this is really bad. Here's the peace sign. This must be kind of like a mecca for counterculture people, hipsters. You know, this guy. It's just. Okay, let's get back to the Super Bowl. Okay, so symbolically, at a time when the U.S. was about to determine its next 4 years, in November. Earlier that year, you had this big event. It's almost like an American holiday, where you had a team that represents a team that represents an area that represents a completely different philosophy, playing a team that's the complete opposite of them, from a place that's completely opposite of them. It was interesting. Okay, so and they won. They won that game. The next year, they went to the Super Bowl again, but they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, what's interesting about that is a Buccaneer. What's a Buccaneer? A Buccaneer is a pirate. Okay. um, you could say pirates. They're kind of in the same category as secret combinations, in a sense. Um, in fact, there's actually a lot you could say about pirates, because sometimes you think of them as just kind of like renegades. They're just kind of like doing their own thing. But when you study history, it seems like there's probably more going on there than just like a bunch of hoodlums with ships. So it's interesting that they lost to this profession that steals things from you, right? And kills you. All right. And then the next year, you had the Rams versus the Bengals. So you have a ram fighting a tiger. I don't see any symbolism in that. It is interesting to note, though, that the Rams originally, and for a very long time, for a very, very long time, it seemed to me, they were in St. Louis, Missouri. And I think before that, they actually had been in, I I think they had been. Let's see. Let's go to their. I want to go to their official page here. I think they actually had been in Los Angeles before, right? Let's see. Franchise history: Cleveland. Okay, so they started in Cleveland, and then the first Los Angeles Rams era. So okay, so they were in Los Angeles at one time, um, and then after that, St. Louis from 1995 until 2015. Okay, so anyway, you have the what's now the LA Rams. Um, so it's just kind of interesting to note that they were also from Missouri. So you had Missouri used to be in Missouri, and then it's Missouri again this year. And this year it's going to be the New Jerusalem Chiefs versus the United States Eagles. Okay, that's one way that you can look at it. It'll be interesting to see who wins. Um, and it's interesting because you can actually go back before the Kansas City Chiefs went to the Super Bowl, because before that you had the New England Patriots, which would symbolize America, against the Rams, and the Rams could symbolize Missouri, or I don't know. And then the year before that, it was the Eagles versus the Patriots. So the two of the only teams that represent the United States. And what's interesting about that, if you look at it, is that this game occurred in 2018. This was just like a month, probably not even a month, just a couple weeks after President Nelson became prophet. You have this like symbolic game right here where you have a nation against itself, right? A big battle, America versus America. That's one way that you can look at it. Um, so these are just some kind of like loose thoughts and loose connections, but some of it's more solid than others, especially considering this theme of royalty in Kansas City. I don't think that that's a mistake. And with these Super Bowls here, I don't think that they're a mistake either. It's fascinating that we have the Chiefs coming up again in this particular year with everything that we've been talking about that happened in 2022. When we think about the changes to the temple, which I still don't know what they are, I'm going to try and go next week. But changes to the temple, being called to be the people of the second coming, Sister Nelson saying, "Get on the ark." Um, the Christmas devotional giving us hints of how to be the first to know that the second coming is happening. Um, Elder Bednar talking about, you need to make sure you're wearing the wedding garment if you want to attend the wedding, and just all the things that we've covered on the channel over the last year. Signs in the heavens, signs in the earth, just everywhere. And I think this is another one. Um, I think that it could affect some people at a personal level, possibly, just like how these Super Bowls up here affected me and my wife as we were needing some communication, and the Lord could have done it in different ways, helping us know where to move after the army. But this was a way that kind of it worked really well because we were excited. It was exciting that the Patriots won, and in fact, I think that was the year. No, it's not what I was thinking. Okay, never mind. It just like adding the excitement of the Super Bowl win with moving to Arizona. It like really enhanced that sign, and that might be why it happened that way for us. So, you know, and the other thing to consider is that this is a really large event. There's a lot of eyes on this, watching the Super Bowl. And so, for the same reason that you have these horrendous Super Bowl halftime shows that feel like brainwashing sessions, um, the same reason why the adversary would want to use the Super Bowl to his own ends, well, the Lord can do the same thing, and He can control who wins the game for His own purposes if He's trying to help people in their personal lives and maybe uh, put impressions on people's minds as they're thinking about this. So let's see. I'm pretty sure that's, yeah, I think that's it. Just some really cool stuff. Okay, let's wrap this up. I've updated the Book of Mormon tracker. If you're new to the channel, this is a challenge that we're doing to give out copies of the Book of Mormon. You can do it many different ways. We have in person, mail, text, email, direct message, put it on your social media. And then when you give one out, just let me know. Put it in the comments or send me an email. Make it a simple message, because if it's a longer message, I'm more likely to skip it because I can't read everybody's messages. So please just make it short if you would. As of right now, we have just crossed over to 42. So 4,203 copies of the Book of Mormon shared. A total of 333 people that have shared, which that's gone up. And please, if you're watching this, please do it and let me know. It helps other people want to do it. And doing this challenge is a great way to inspire other people to take action, because it's like we're working on a group project. So please. 13 people are reported as meeting with the missionaries as a result of you giving out the Book of Mormon. So that's where we're at. Please, now more than ever, we should be sharing the gospel and giving copies of the Book of Mormon. Remember that you can go to your gospel library app, click on scriptures, and at the top there's a button for sharing a specific Book of Mormon app. So do that. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share this, and I'll talk to you guys later.